Now, if you will examine the system of education through which most of our children are compelled to pass, you will discover that it imparts almost no knowledge whatsoever of any kind of material competence. Our education is exclusively bookish and is designed on the whole to train people to be bureaucrats, bankers, clerks, insurance salesmen, teachers, and we hope intellectuals. It is a curious thing, but in its weak moments, it admits that there are a lot of people going through the scheme who really will never qualify for graduate school. For these, it must provide, rather regretfully, some courses which train them for other things. It's always a joke among Europeans that in American colleges you can get credits towards an AP for courses in basket weaving. And this isn't really so funny as it looks, because when it is the ideal that everyone should go through college if possible, you have to adjust to facts. You can't have a nation, you can't have a society in which everyone is always occupied in intellectual and computational pursuit. A few people have to be around who know how to handle the material world in a gracious way. For these people, we provide only regretfully, as an afterthought. The people who might otherwise be dropouts in high school should be given some courses which would prepare them for trades in carpentry, metallurgy, even perhaps auto mechanics, furniture makers, cooks, and so on. But as a rule, because these kinds of education in the academic world are provided only with regret, they are provided in the slovenly fashion. We simply do not relate to the material world, and we are increasingly lacking in any kind of competence in handling physical matter, except in such far-out cases as people who make jet aircraft and certain very sophisticated types of scientific instruments, where it is absolutely necessary that there be the highest degree of mastery. Aside from that, because of the lack of material competence, our life is extremely drab. It is simply astonishing that the wealthiest nation on earth simply does not know how to enjoy itself in a material and obvious way. Now, you would think, you see, if you were just an ordinary kind of a horse sense kind of person, that the richest nation on earth would have a whale of a good time. You would think that with all the money one earns, even doing a factory job, that when the hours of work are over, the people would go home with all the money that they earn, which makes them princes by comparison with Indians and Chinese, that they would go home to fantastic banquets, marvelous orgies, and riots of pleasure all the night through. This would simply be common sense to people who did not suffer from Protestant ethics. But, in fact, what happens is this. We've got life strictly divided into two categories, work and play. Work, on the whole, is something that you do to get money, and you are paid to do it because so much work is so deplorably boring that nobody wants to do it. So they'll pay someone else to do it instead. So while you do it, you watch the clock, you put in your hours, and then you get money for having done it. And then you're supposed to go home and enjoy yourself and have fun. Well, what do? You get home, and instead of having fun, the main thing is to watch TV. The TV is an electronic reproduction of existence which is cut off from you by a glass wall, has no smell. If you're very rich, it has color, but you are as in a zoo where you look at something beyond the bar where it says, do not touch the exhibits. You cannot touch it. You cannot mingle with it. You merely witness it in a passive way. And while you do this, you are served a TV dinner, which is something that was originally animal and vegetable that has been frozen so as to deprive it of almost any taste at all. It has then been warmed over, and you eat it not because you enjoy eating it, but because it's good for you. It enables you to continue living, because it has been carefully studied that it has in it exactly the right amount of calories, carbohydrates, and vitamins. Many of such preparations are served with a small label which contains a scientific formula on them as to all the good things for you which it contains. It tastes of nothing whatsoever. And you eat this while you watch this show going on. You may wash it down with a soft drink, it's vaguely alcoholic, called beer, and in the meantime you get absorbed by the spectacle going on in front of you, in which you do not participate, you merely witness it, and it goes on long enough for you to be tired enough to go to sleep. This is supposed to be a life of pleasure. Generally speaking, you see, we really are not materialists at all. We don't love material. We hate it. and we are devoted to the cause of converting it as fast as possible into junk and poison gas. We are not people who love time, which is one of the measurements of material, and space, which is another. They want to abolish it. We want to get as fast as possible from one place to another, to get rid of space and to get rid of time. The result of this is, of course, that as we get rid of space and time, as we make all places almost immediately accessible by jet aircraft, all places become the same place. So naturally, the tourist is beguiled into taking a holiday inn, asks, is it still somewhere else? Is it still a land of girls in cooler skirts and naked breasts and palm trees and so on? Well, they'll make it like it is, vaguely, but of course it isn't. Honolulu is the same place as Coney Island. Atlantic City, Tokyo is just the same. It is simply an extension of Los Angeles, one of our suburbs, because the faster you can get from place to place, the more you have conquered the limitations of time and space, the more everywhere is the same place. So the differences between different cultures, the differences between people, the things that we want to see when we go to foreign places are increasingly unavailable, except as something provided in a funny way for the entertainment of tourists, to deceive them into the idea that they really did get somewhere else. And look at another aspect of this. One of the basic things about material existence is, of course, eating food. And as I just indicated, we eat, as in the case of the TV, that is good. You know, it's always said that the French eat with gusto, but the British eat apologetically, and we've inherited the British tradition in a way. Stick it down into your stomach, and it passes through your intestines and so on. That's rather degrading. Means you are, after all, an animal, and therefore there should be good reason for doing this. Well, get at it, and the good reason is that it's healthy. Therefore, when you eat food, really, ideally, it should all be concentrated into a pill, so that you wouldn't have to waste time, valuable time, over meals, but taken the necessary ingredients for the rather shameful fact that we have to exist in and get rid of it. And so, therefore, when you study in general the art of cooking in the United States from coast to coast, it is pretty poor. It is not something that is done out of love, but something that is done out of duty. And so we are great at what I will call eating the menu instead of the dinner, because the dinner itself is thrown together in a hurry. It's simply a job. All sorts of people who have a certain amount of professional training cook, not because they like cooking, but because it's a job through which you can make money which is perfectly abstract, inedible. This is a fallacy, you see, this division between work and play, that anybody who regards being a cook in a restaurant as something which is simply a job which you have to do in order to make money, and therefore can go out and have fun in something else besides cooking, has been absolutely deluded. He has been persuaded to spend a very substantial part of his life doing something which he hates doing in order that he may earn the wherewithal to do what is really fun later on. And this, insofar as our education is oriented towards training people for jobs, this is the colossal fallacy. The only jobs worth working at are those which you thoroughly enjoy. And it is possible to enjoy thoroughly being, say, a cook in a restaurant, if you are allowed to take delight in it and to reverence the fish, the flour, the vegetables, fruit which are provided for you to work with. But as things stand, what happens is exactly you go into a restaurant where they give you a menu which probably has colored photographs on it of each dish, and it says something like this: fillet of Colorado, mountain trout, fried to a delicate golden brown in breadcrumbs, garnished with fresh garden peas, French fried potatoes, lemon wedge. Last time I encountered this, it was in a restaurant where they had the nerve to keep an open kitchen, and when I saw the smoked fillet of Colorado mountain trout, incidentally, this was in Wyoming, it was the severe rectangle of some off-white substance which rattled when it hit the griddle. You know, the whole thing's completely mechanical because there was in this process absolutely no love for the work itself. The cook, in other words, was wasting his precious time in life by going through the motions of being in order to get money for enjoyment. Now, the thing that has to be understood fundamentally in the whole process of education for life is that money is an abstraction. It cannot of itself give any pleasure. because skill requires enough love to discipline yourself to enjoy the pleasure. I live in Sausalito, which is a lovely waterfront, and we have harbors galore with pleasure craft, sailing boats, motor cruises, which very few people go out because sailing is a difficult craft. These boats were advertised as something you ought to have to enjoy yourself. But when you got them, you found that you couldn't enjoy yourself unless you knew how to sail. Well, you didn't have time to do that because you were so busy making money. So all these boats just stand around, but nobody really enjoys them at all because they won't take the trouble. But having been persuaded that money is wealth, take another case of this delusion. You could make a lot of money, say, in the grocery business by turning out shoddy products in excellent packages. You cheat on the weight and you cheat on the quality, you make more money, fine. We have cars with obsolescence, which are nothing but toy rocket chips. We have, as I said, various kinds of foodstuffs, which are increasingly lacking in development. We have houses which are made of ticky-tacky. We have entertainment in which there is no participation. You're not allowed to join, you just watch. We are fouling our nest. And the reason for this is the whole philosophy of education. Have you noticed how the cartoon strips have to do with father as a clown? Take Dagwood in the comic strip, the incompetence of Dad. Whereas, who is therefore the realist in the picture? Dad is a why, because he goes away to a mysterious place called the office or the factory, in which the family as such have no part and no real interest. He brings back a thing called money, and they want more of it. See, back at home, they don't care how you get it, just so long as you bring it back, because they're not interested in what you as a man do. And when you come back from the various rat races in which you are engaged making money, you're supposed to be a good pal to the children, play with them, and look after your wife and appreciate what she's done all during the day. They have no interest in what you couldn't kill this. You are expected to live for your children. Americans have an enormous sense of guilt because they have not done right by their children, and they're trying more and more to do right by their children. They always feel they haven't quite succeeded somehow. We are child-centered families constantly feeling guilty because we haven't brought them up. Therefore, we call in every kind of specialist and expert and advisor to tell us what we should do with our children. The difficulty is that the family, as an institution, is not surviving in industrial culture. It is an institution designed for an agrarian culture. The family was built around the farm, where the children worked and understood and were brought up into the interests of the farm, the small shop, or the workshop, such as you find in an agrarian culture. It's fascinating to notice today the transition from agrarian to industrial culture in a country like Japan, where it's been extremely rapid. Let's take the craft of carpentry in Japan. The Japanese have been some of the best carpenters in the world. Absolutely marvelous. Knowing how to make the most complex joinery constructions without even using a blueprint, doing it by feel and by eye. In order to train a person to do this kind of carpentry, he has to begin to learn when he's 7 years old. But as it is now, because Japan has transferred to being an industrial culture, you may not bring up your child in your profession as a carpenter. You have to send the child to school where it can learn to be an insurance salesman. The child gets through school, goes through high school. When the child gets out, it's not interested in carpentry, it's interested in girls. Has to fool around with that for a while, and then get married, and then begin to learn the carpenter's trade. And it's too late to be anything but somebody there. Therefore, this marvelous craft, which the Japanese cultivated for centuries, for what I know, many carpenters in the United States today who take enormous pride in their work, who love to produce a beautifully finished object made of wood, but they cannot find jobs because no employer can afford that time. So nobody has any satisfaction in the job, and the reason is the family no longer holds together because the man in the family has to go away, earn a living that has absolutely no relation to his living relationship. When he comes home, he's not really a very good pal to his children, because the children would find a real relationship with their father in joining in his work with him. Every little child wants to join in his parents' work. They go into the kitchen. They would much rather play with the pots and pans than anything else. They want to help. They naturally want to join in, but they cannot. And therefore, instead of being allowed to join in with the real work of their parents, they are given propitiatory objects called toys. You may have a toy stove. You may have toy dolls and pretend that they're babies. You may not actually look after the baby because there might be an accident. So the children are propitiated with every kind of fake plastic, and the children are not satisfied with this. They're absolutely frustrated with it because all these toys fall apart in a hurry. They don't really work. They don't know what's expected of them. They are not real. The child knows they're not. And you should see Christmas Day. When you really think about Christmas Day in the average family and realize that after the children have opened all their fake presents which were dolled up to look as if they were the treasures of princes, and they get the plastic toys, and they find everything doesn't work, and by time for Christmas dinner, they're in a screaming tantrum because they know inwardly that they've been insulted. They are not allowed to participate in the real world. You are children, and so as the whole educational process continues, they are educated for unreality by being lured like this. You know the story of the donkey who has a carrot and it's attached to a stick which is fastened to the donkey's collar. So he always chases it but never catches it. So this is what we do. We send a child into kindergarten, and the next thing coming, college, maybe that's wrong, and step by step, and go on, and you get to graduate school. If you're smart at this point, you stay there. But if you don't get into graduate school so that you can just stay, you go into business. That's getting out into the world. That's graduation. See, now you're an adult. And if that thing is at the end of the line, it's there. And all the advertisements say, I'm there, but I haven't caught up with that thing. I was always, say, in insurance, you're going to retire at 65. We got a program for you so that you'll be just right when you're 65. You'll be able to drop all this business. Bad teeth because you ate all the stuff that you were making to make money with. The money goes for something never happened, never was good enough. But you were always getting prepared for life. A real education is an entirely different thing. An education in the real sense is not preparation for life. It is actually participation. It is the child participating and doing it now, realizing that the point of the process in which the child is engaged is not to prepare the child for the future, but to enjoy doing the thing today, because the whole point is that there is no point whatsoever in making plans for the future, except for those people who are capable of living in the present. If you are not capable of living in the present, plans are useless, because when those plans come to fruition, you will be incapable of enjoying that fruition. Don't worry. If you are not capable of living in the present, don't make any plans. If you are capable of living in the present, then some plans may be useful, because they will produce something which you can enjoy and take part in. But it seems to me that the absolute point of any educational system that has any worth whatsoever is the progressive allowing of children to participate in activities that adults consider real and important. And that should begin very early. Instead of saying to children, no, you go away and play while we do what's important, let them in on what we consider important at once. But this is very difficult in what we call the child-centered family. If you see, you regard what you do in life as not, say, your profession, your vocation, your job, if you regard that merely as a means to an end. Supposing you are making money in a factory, producing something worthless and trashy, but it pays, and you justify this on the grounds that it will give you money to bring up your children to do something better than you are doing. You are fooling yourself, because your child will copy you. And if you exist simply to bring up your children for something better than you have, then your children will do nothing but exist to bring up their children to do something better than they have. And they'll always be frustrated. If, on the other hand, you are doing something in life, you have a vocation, a work which you're doing, which you are really interested in and which you thoroughly enjoy, and it's this that you live for, and not for your children, then your children will catch your enthusiasm, and they in turn will find something that they can live for and be really interested in, and in turn their children will become interested in it. But we are unfortunately a culture, because we always have the sense of guilt that we haven't brought up our children properly. We do everything possible we can, theoretically. It's for the good of the children. You should not live for the good, you should live for your own good. And then your children will learn from your example how to live. So then, our education, then, is a progressive letting of children into adult life, not a preparation for adult life. The whole idea of preparation should be discarded. There is simply increased participation in what we're doing. I have just come from Mexico, from a very primitive area where the educational system is sloppy, and I watch builders at work, and they're wonderfully skillful with bricks. Here are the older men working on a house, surrounded with little boys who are their children, and the little boys are running errands and doing things, and they are learning how to build while they're fathers, and they feel one with their fathers. Dad isn't some obscure being off there who they occasionally meet in the evening and who does something completely mysterious and is supposed to chum up with them on a purely play basis. See, what is Dad? See what it is in our families. Dad comes home and he plays with the children about something trivial. He reads them a story about the mousie and the teddy bear, and having done that, he's satisfied his duties. But these so-called primitive Mexicans have their children working along with them, and those Mexican children, I'm not speaking of Mexico City and industrial slums, but of village children, can be trusted to do all kinds of things. But they are our responsibility to be educated by other children. We want to give them the best we can for the children. You make it simple. The idea of the Hindus, of your farmer, or in the Christian terms, of vocation, that's the thing you really live for, not children. If you really have that, your children will catch it and be inspired by it and join. But the problem is, you see, that in the industrial culture, there are very few opportunities to bring about that state of affairs. Imagine going to the bank and bringing your children along with you to peek over the counter while you hand out the cash, put in the checks. You see, in any important thing we do, we get rid of our children. We get the babysitter, and when we're going to have fun in the evening, get the babysitter and keep the children out of it, for heaven's sakes. And this is simply symbolic of the fact that children are utterly excluded from real life, and they are put in these completely artificial schools where they learn to be cerebral, nothing of the fundamental art of handling matter. Now, what are the fundamental arts that we need in this life if we are to be comfortable? If we are to enjoy ourselves? We need good food, well cooked. Isn't that fundamental? Do you live to eat, or do you eat to live? But if you don't live to eat, the food that you eat won't be very nutritive to enable you to eat to live. You won't take any trouble over it, you won't love it. Look, when you get materials, you've got some onions, you've got some fish, you've got a slice of beef. You can't cook that properly unless you love it. All those are dead creatures which have died in your honor. What are you going to do? Most people have no idea how to cook fish in this country. They overcook it, so it's dry and tasteless because they don't watch it. They don't wait till the exact moment when it's right. But cooking is regarded as a chore, something that poor wives have to do, confined to live in the kitchen. Most kitchens are like bathrooms. You go to the bathroom to clean up, excrete, and so on, which is sort of nasty, so you put it out of the way. The kitchens also in most homes are whitewashed places with white refrigerators and white washing machines and white sinks that look like surgeries or bathrooms. I have always found a formula. Wherever you find a colorless kitchen, you will find tasteless food. Now, in any real life, in a real home, the kitchen is the center of the house. There's a great hearth where things are bubbling and everybody gathers around that, waiting with eager appetites while they watch this thing prepare. That's going to be just great. Everybody is just warming up, sitting around the fire to begin. Instead of having it, you see, most houses are nowadays designed so that you pretend you still have servants. So there's the parlor or the living space, which is partitioned off from the kitchen. Well, your ladies and gentlemen sit there. Then you have a room downstairs where the children play, the basement, the rumpus room. The harassed wife has to get all the stuff ready to present it as a big show, bring it on. There's nothing of the kind. The poor wife is alone, rushing. Say, when you're entertaining people in the evening, she's fixing all this stuff. Whereas, if we were realistic, the kitchen would be the main room of the house, and everybody would gather around and watch it all being done, because nothing is being done in the kitchen doesn't happen, except in very few far-out homes. So, cooking, then, is one of the arts of material competence. and we do not teach it. You take a course in domestic dietetics and so on in the average school, high school or college. It doesn't teach you how to cook. The class of dietitian and the class of cook are mutually exclusive, because the dietitian is taught to measure everything, the house itself, because they are not adapted to the hills. If you like to live in the hills, you want to live in the hills. Therefore, don't turn them into flat areas. Therefore, design a house which is appropriate to a hill, a house which will not disturb the hill, which will fit in with the contours of nature and the vegetation, which is what you wanted to live in and enjoy anyhow, wasn't it? Have you ever looked at the furniture in Dagwood's house? You know, it's really one of the things that we suffer from. We have too much furniture. We have these enormous couches and all kinds of fake antiques and fake modern stuff too, because it's simply things that have been thrown together by people who didn't like doing it. Much better to have a very few pieces of furniture made by an artist who enjoyed making it. And all sorts of claptrap was thrown together, and as is always invariably advertised to be more than what it is, and causes frustration, disappointment, having been cheated when it all falls apart. We just don't know how to dress. All men in the United States, with some exceptions on the West Coast, look like human directors. I'm wearing this, I don't know what's the matter, but it absolutely is a violation of the nature of cloth. Cloth, naturally, is a two-way system with warp and woof. It's woven in rectangles. That's the convenient way to weave cloth. Therefore, cloth is straight stuff which will hang upon the human body with great dignity and fall naturally into folds. It's made in, say, the form of a Japanese kimono. But this thing is a bastard uniform with buttons on the sleeve, which serve no other purpose than a relic of the days when they were there to prevent servants from wiping their noses. This thing simply cannot be folded or packed away without making it a mess. So it has to be sent to the cleaners in order to wear, because it is a fake which is designed to fit the human body, to fit the contours of the male figure, which is not in the nature of the garment. When it is shaped in this way, it doesn't fit you. You have violated the nature of cloth. Therefore, you've got yourself a kind of silly armor, and it, furthermore, is not comfortable. Let's take, for example, trousers. Trousers are designed for movement. We wear all kinds of complicated neckties and buttons, everything to make us uncomfortable. Furthermore, our clothes, if you want really good clothes today, and everybody ought to know about, well, let's take lovemaking. That's very fundamental. But this is something that our children learn through whispered hearsay or through a few courses in hygiene in high school, which tell the bare facts, but nothing of the art. And this is picked up in a sloppy, slovenly way because of this weird. Here is the real power in this culture where we say we are materialist. In fact, what happens is this: everything to do with sexuality is regarded as fundamentally dirty, associated with the toilet. And therefore, it's something basically prohibited. But men brought up in the WASP culture know that it's really supposed to be fun, and so they sort of snicker about it. And it's always on the side. It's something that you don't really enjoy unless you feel it's dirty, you're doing something you're not supposed to do. Then it's kind of fun. So there is nobody. The most reprehensible thing you could do that would be instructive to show every subtlety would be serious. That would be almost religious in its approach. That would be the most dangerous. It's all right. So, as a result, we have a culture which, instead of being materialist, is abstraction, which, for example, confuses money with wealth. You know the situation. You go to the supermarket, not perhaps because your bank balance went down, but instead you've got the car full of the stuff you're going to walk out with. The real wealth is in the car, not mentioning how much of it is fake. But it is essentially, that is your food, that is the stuff you're going to live on, and it's in your car, and you're going to go away with it. But you lost the money. So, in other words, the abstract thing, the amount of money, the figures, the status that you have, all that is more important than the actual physical situation. So, likewise, going back to the subject of the way things look, The way the girl is packaged is much more important than what she is underneath. In other words, few engineering dimensions where we really have done a good job. A jet plane is a remarkable triumph, even though it abolishes distance, even though it makes every place the same as every other place. It is in itself a triumph of material competence. But in all the fundamental things of life, in clothing, cooking, with housing, and raising children, in lovemaking, we are the biggest material incompetence that ever existed, because our values are abstract instead of concrete. How it looks rather than how it feels, how it appears rather than how it tastes. And so I would think what I'm saying is that we need an education which brings us back to nature, in the sense not but of being focused on the material presence and knowing that this is where you live, to be completely related to the physical, natural, material, or whatever you want to call it, here and now, to know that's the only place you live. You don't live anywhere else. And to be able to live richly and fully in that situation, instead of constantly preparing children for something else later. I think this means the easing of the school burden, first of all by throwing a lot of it back. The school system is a huge babysitter, but that in turn requires that parents be in a position to take care of their children. As it is, you see, they're engaged in occupations which necessarily take them away from them. Sure, what does that go back to in the line of cause and effect? It goes back to the fact that people are engaged in occupations which simply make money and which they do not really enjoy and which they do not live with. And that is why among young people today, under 25, there is an increasing unwillingness. Corporations looking for bright talent, going around our colleges today, are having an increasingly difficult time. But the brighter the student, the less they want to get involved in the traditional kind of corporate life, because that completely takes them away from any form of work which will involve real participation. So people are looking for ways of living whereby they don't live this fragmented, abstract work life that is completely cut off from all the rest. Truly human associations in which have the satisfaction of being an actual relationship to the real world in which we live now. It will be very disruptive of things we know, but better by far to live in contact with the actual here and now, and to live a life of perpetual suspense, waiting for a gorgeous thing that never comes.